Can go ahead and get started. Okay, so today we are really joined by Rosie Viva. She is a model, she's a documentary filmmaker, an activist. She is passionate about encouraging and helping people talk about neurodiversity. She was diagnosed with bipolar a few years back and has had a really interesting journey. So she's going to tell us a little bit about that and how it's kind of been for her, how it's affected her life. She did a channel for digital documentary called Modeling Mania and Me, charting her day-to-day experiences of living with bipolar disorder, which has amassed over 100,000 views since May, which is really amazing. Channel 4 is looking to make Rosie the next face of mental health. She is an ambassador for Bipolar UK. Her writing and work has been featured in a whole bunch of publications. She has a book out, actually, which we'll talk a little bit about as well. So, really excited to have you. Thank you so much for joining us. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of what you do?
Yeah, so nice to sort of meet everyone and be connected to you guys. It's always really interesting to me to also speak to people in different countries about managing the same thing, because I know that care can be really different, opinions can be really different, culturally, everything. So yeah, thank you for having me today. So yeah, as you said, I mean, the intro you've given me is so nice. But yeah, I'm 29, I'm London based, and I had my diagnosis 7 years ago now. But I think in the last sort of 5 years, I've become more and more confident and passionate that this is something I'd like to be an activist in. Um, Definitely from a sense when I got diagnosed at 22 that I couldn't find any young girls in the media speaking about bipolar. I couldn't find any girls just on my explore feed on Instagram, just like normal people who I could relate to, who I already followed. I had to sort of go out my way, and it was always men older and no one I could sort of relate to. So
Mhm.
that's why I started to speak about this. And then also, I guess it's nice to be talking about something at an age where you're just trying to figure it out rather than a lot of people online seem to sort of already had it sorted. But again, the
Yeah.
age difference was just there. So yeah, become quite a public speaker in this space and getting weller with every year, I think. So nice to sort of talk about that.
Yeah. So can you I know if anybody is familiar with your documentary or anything that you've done before, you do kind of talk about your diagnosis story, but for anybody who isn't aware, can you kind of give us a general rundown of how you found out and kind of what led to that and the feelings that were associated with that?
Yes. So I always find it quite interesting because I guess for some people, a diagnosis is something which they go after and they look back at their history and then it makes total sense that they've had bipolar. Whereas I think with me and with a lot of people who have type 1, there is no getting away from that moment, in that I was sort of in the prime age, early 20s. And I guess to put things into perspective, it was 2018. I had a year where my depression and anxiety got so bad that I could no longer sort of mask it. Growing up, I definitely struggled with my mental health, but I was always able to sort of display really happy and display like nothing was wrong. And I even sort of second guessed myself and just thought mental health was maybe something we all had, but just not to speak about it.
Mhm.
And then in 2018, I started having panic attacks, and physically, I just felt like I was going to die about 3 times a day. I would ring ambulances sometimes. I was no part of me which didn't think that my heart was shutting down as well as my mind.
Mhm.
Um, so that was going on, and it was sort of really taking a toll on my friendships, my relationship at the time, and my ability to work. And then in September of that year, I think after 8 months of living in this sort of hell and really thinking, I just don't think I can do this. I just can't function. And I don't know who I am anymore, but this illness. I guess there was just this moment of switch when I went through a breakup. And instead of feeling really sad after breaking up with my boyfriend, it was like this complete euphoric state. And very quickly, within 2 weeks of that breakup, my language was becoming spiritual. I wasn't speaking, I wasn't sleeping. I was so excited. I was like very certain that I was sort of on this path to let people know about Jesus coming back. Um,
Mhm.
and I'd grown up atheist and my whole family's atheist. So that change in language was quite out of character.
Mhm.
Um, but I guess when I was in it, it was just so normal. And then suddenly it was like I suddenly slipped into tongues. And so the day that I got my diagnosis was when I was sectioned. And that whole episode was rather public because I went to Stansted Airport,
Mm.
and instead of boarding a flight, I jumped through baggage drop off and hit off a fire alarm on my left. So that was being arrested and then being put into hospital was my sort of series of events. But yeah, very public on Instagram as well the week before, which was obviously quite a lot to deal with when I came out of my episode, but just sharing like a lot of epiphanies and quite grandiose thoughts at the time.
Yeah. So you said almost just about 22,
Yeah.
when this happened. So were you living at home or were you living on your own at this point?
I was living at home, but I think for the month when I was sectioned, my parents were away on holiday.
Okay.
Um, so they could only really know that something was wrong by my language over text and
Uh,
phone calls of like really heightened emotions. But they thought because of my breakup, I was just having, I mean, the only thing they thought it could be was a bit of a moment because even though my family are well educated, no one had ever spoken about bipolar before. It's
mhm.
not something discussed very openly. And so those warning signs, which are now really easily seen as textbook, were just missed.
Yeah.
So especially those weeks before hospital, it was just a case, like a really unlucky case of being on my own at that time.
Mhm. How did they react to the diagnosis? Were they surprised or did they validate it or did it take them a little bit of time to kind of accept it and understand it?
Um, they reacted well. I guess just because the year before my diagnosis was so confusing, and I think it was the first time where I lost my bounce and I lost my spark and I wasn't positive and I couldn't see anything in a positive light. And so for them, my diagnosis at first was an answer as to what had been going on. And
Mhm.
at least it was something where we now knew that there was medication and support. However, I think they would be fine about saying that, we did speak about it in a hushed tone at first. It
Mhm.
wasn't like it is now, where they're really proud about me talking about this and telling people about my book and really like see it as something which should be empowering because they didn't know it well enough.
I know. Hold on, I think I might have lost you.
They'd never really discussed it.
Oh, there you go. You cut out a little bit in the middle of that.
Oh.
You're back. Okay. Um, Wait, sorry. Can you say like the last sentence that you just said?
Yeah, I was just saying what was good about my parents' reaction was that they were very open-minded to learning.
Okay.
So we were quite hushed in our tone talking about it, and I think that's what's quite difficult when you're
Mhm.
young and you're dealing with a diagnosis is that everyone and family friends will go, "Oh, how are you doing?" Immediately people
Sure.
drop into that tone of shame. But I
Mhm.
think as the years have gone on and as they've seen me manage to make it into something positive, they've
Mhm.
changed their opinion and learned with me.
Yeah. What advice do you have for people, I think especially young women, because we do kind of have a different experience with these kind of things, and it's obviously something that you have experience with, dealing with something like this, especially sharing it with their families and trying to be open about it to people that they love. What advice do you have to, yeah, young girls like that? And I guess how can you kind of explain how you navigated that and were able to open up and be honest about it?
Yeah, I think the best advice is just something I would say is like as a young woman, I think it's a really difficult diagnosis to deal with and not to downplay how hard that is compared to what other people your age go through. Just
Mhm.
because on top of hormones, like already when you're a young woman, you want guys to think you're really cool and really laid back and like you never get angry and like in your
Mhm.
first relationships, you're trying not to have all of those emotions and be this like really chilled out, cool girl. And then having bipolar just adds another layer of emotions you deal
Mhm.
with on top of being a female and all of that. And I think it's just giving yourself the grace that that's a really difficult thing to navigate. And actually, it gets so much easier as you get older because people start to be attracted to you for you. And luckily, people just mature and the right friends come to you.
True.
But I would definitely say that it's just one of those things where there's no right or wrong way to deal with the diagnosis. But
Mhm.
whatever makes your life easier, you've got to lean into that. So if it is being able to speak to girlfriends about it, I guess it's just finding a way which feels comfortable. And then equally, if it's a big group of new people and you don't want to bring it up, that doesn't mean that you're ashamed of having bipolar. It doesn't mean you always have to be this advocate all the time. I think it's also fine to want to act normal in some situations because we're exposed to such abnormal sort of environments with bipolar in hospitals, in doctor's appointments, you know, more than your friends have ever done. And if you
Mhm.
have an opportunity to not bring it up and to talk about Love is Blind, like, great, don't. You know? Like, I just think it's really nice to be compassionate and just see how you feel about it and
Yeah, yeah.
not worry too much.
Just not put so much pressure on yourself to have to act any certain way, just kind of do whatever
Yeah,
feels
reading the room, I think. It's just
right.
nice because
Mhm.
it will come. And like, even if it's any consolation, I didn't talk much about this for 2 or 3 years. And
Mhm.
I think that was just because I wanted to read a lot of novels. I wanted to read different people's experiences. And that
Yeah.
helped me build up my confidence that this isn't one personality type, that everyone's got such a unique experience to them. And then
Mhm.
once I understood that, it made me more comfortable to start explaining my version of bipolar because I
Yeah.
knew that that was valid to my friends and family rather than them being on Google. It's like the best way to teach your family and friends about it is for them to see how you have it. We've all got different patterns and mood like processes. Like I've never met two people with bipolar who ever have a similar pattern. So it's good to
No, definitely not. Yeah,
get
it's
your
kind of
confidence
interesting.
up.
I feel like people, yeah, really do have just such specific different experiences, and it's all kind of generally under the same umbrella, but it is a very, very specific, very personalized thing. So that's a really good point to just, yeah, kind of listen to your own cues and your own friends and like you know yourself best, obviously. So really great advice. As for turning gears a little bit, medication, can you tell us a little bit about your medication journey and kind of how that's been for you?
Medication journey. So I would always say it's quite an important part of recovery is that first few years of just getting it right.
Mhm.
And for anyone who's currently in that stage, which feels so helpless, like every medication I tried was sort of 6 weeks of trying it, and then I'd say it didn't work. And I think the first 7 months after my diagnosis was just so low and suicidal because I didn't think anything was working and it really wasn't.
Mhm.
So I was on aripiprazole in hospital. I was on lithium for a while. I was on citalopram, sertraline. I tried a lot of antidepressants sort of in that really like difficult period. But what ended up working for me was 4 years on lithium combined with quetiapine. And then eventually I've just reduced to quetiapine. So now I'm on 100 milligrams a day. And for years I was on 400 milligrams. So I only made that adjustment after 6 years. Oh yeah, it's taken 6 years to get to the right combination, but it's better late than never.
Yeah, I mean, it really does. I think that's another part of it is the medication journey is so personal and so specific to each person. And, you know, you can't really have like a guidebook on what works for one person. Just it does not mean that it's going to work for you. And I think that's
No.
really something that, yeah, is not really common knowledge in this space. It seems like a lot of people kind of look to others for guidance on that. And it really, it's tough, but it's like you really just got to go through the journey of trying things and see what works, see what doesn't, you know?
Yeah. And also, I think, yeah, like you said, it's one of those things where with medication, just trust your gut. Speak to
Yeah,
your doctor about how you're feeling and say all of the sort of weird symptoms you might be having because it's actually really helpful to them. And
yeah,
I think every time I'd look online, or even now, I know a few girls who are younger than me with bipolar who are asking about how did you feel on this med? How did you feel on this? And it's like an endless cycle and it's almost too much information. Whereas I think just taking your own journey with it and really listening to what makes a difference is the best way to go about it. Because luckily, there's so many different sort of combinations, medications. It's just that boring timeline or that first few years of having to sit through trials. Uh,
yeah.
which I really empathize for people going through, because a day can feel so long in that time. I used to wake up and be like, I can't, like, I actually can't do another day. And it's like your concentration as well is so not there. So it's not like a sick day physically where you can just sit and watch TV. It's like you
Right.
can't escape your mind. And that is just, I really feel for people in that stage. It was absolutely horrible.
Yeah, it's just you kind of do have to go through it in order to get to a point maybe where you are now, where you feel like you know yourself pretty well and you're comfortable with what you're taking and it feels like it's helping. It's just like it's part of the journey, which is it's so tough, but it is really, I think, a good thing to be honest about for people to
Mm.
expect that and kind of know going into a diagnosis that that's part of it, but you're going to get through it. It's not going to be forever.
Yeah. And I'd also say, like, now, because I post a lot about running, I'm super passionate about running. And
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not very quick, but I've been running for like years before my diagnosis. And I guess when I was trialing different medications, I wasn't able to exercise because I
Mhm.
was so lethargic, especially on like really heavy medication. And
Yeah.
I think I was looking at people online and being like, oh God, I have to eat well, I have to exercise, I have to take meds in order to get better. But I would say that all comes so much easier once the medication is sorted, and to be slightly kinder and just, if you can do a swim or a walk every day, great, but don't expect to have the energy to do all of that until you've got that really key part of medication sort of in a good place for yourself.
Yeah. No, definitely. You've been honestly just really honest about your diagnosis, I think, throughout the entire journey of being public and becoming more of a public figure with it. Can you, I guess, just tell us what made you want to speak openly about it? What really caused that? I know you talked a little bit about how you just felt like you weren't really represented, but is there, yeah, any other reasons you wanted to open up about it so publicly?
I think it's just, I had such a horrible time when I was dealing with my diagnosis, because my opinion of bipolar was really negative, because
Hmm.
I couldn't see myself in the media, because I couldn't find myself on Instagram or any social media. It just felt like I had this death sentence, and that it was sort of, maybe hospital would be my life and be my whole future. And unfortunately, I became really suicidal in that time. And, I planned to end my life. And that just really breaks my heart, that whole sort of series of events. I was offered to be sectioned again when that happened, for being on the low end. And now looking over the last 7 years and how much I like love life after this episode, it breaks my heart that people don't get to see that other side, and that point is a breaking point. So anything I can do to stop that happening is really important to me.
Yeah.
Um, just because when you've been through such hell, everything does become so nice. Like, it really does. I
Well,
can't, like,
well,
I'm such a happy person now.
mhm.
And it's just because whenever things are bad, I can literally still do what I want. I can see friends, I can go and exercise, I can go for a glass of wine. Like, I have this independence, and I just didn't really believe I didn't believe that I would make it. So yeah, it's I'm very, very passionate to let young people who know that that can happen even after sort of 3 years
Yeah.
of really being in the thick of it.
Yeah, I think you talk a little bit more about all of this in your book. Can you give us a little rundown on when that was released, what it's about, and kind of, yeah, just talk a little bit about like a short synopsis, I guess, on that.
Okay, so my book is called Completely Normal and Totally Fine, which I'm sure anyone with bipolar will find quite ironic, because there's nothing normal and fine about those times. But basically, when I was looking to read a lot of books around my diagnosis, I was straight onto Google, type bipolar books, read anything, ordered everything.
Mhm.
And all of them were so well written, but the tone was really negative and really serious. And I just, like, my week to week books I read are sort of all these incredible female authors, a lot of them London based, and have a real sort of self-deprecating tone to them. Or because I love watching stuff like Bridget Jones, where it's like women who don't take themselves too seriously. I couldn't find that book about bipolar. And
Yeah.
actually, so much of our actions are hilarious because of what we manage. I mean, before this call, I won't go into it again, but just like the stuff week to week, which that heightened confidence makes you do, is so
Yeah.
embarrassing that like you have to sort of find a way to laugh about it because it's just
Mhm.
not. Sometimes it takes over, and I just had 3 months of thinking, you know what? Maybe I don't have bipolar. I've been so stable, and then I have 2 weeks where I'm sort of like going out clubbing on my own and like just being really weird. And I just wanted a book where girls know that those sort of ways of thinking are actually really normal. So hence the title being quite ironic. But yeah,
Yeah.
it was a really cathartic book to write and very conversational. And the feedback's been that most people have read it in like under 2 days. And I
Mhm.
just wanted something digestible like that for people to read, to know that young people have this, and that they're not alone.
Yeah, no, I think that's honestly why people like you are so needed in this community and just in this space in general, because we really, like you said, don't have that representation. And I like for people that are my age, your age, kind of similar demographic, like it really does help to have somebody that you can look at and just like think like I know that person. Like I could see myself
Yeah.
being friends with that person. That's somebody that I would relate to because I think it yeah, it just makes you feel a little less alone. I think like young people, especially young women, we just don't really have that in the mental health space, especially with bipolar for sure. Like you said, it's kind of stereotyped as this like older male mental illness or disorder. And it's yeah, I think just really nice to have that voice of somebody that you can just chat with and have a funny conversation with and shed light on it too. Because yeah, it is kind of obviously crazy at times. You do things that you would not normally do in other circumstances. So totally appreciate that. Do you have any other books that you've read that you liked that were
I
a good
Do you know
representation?
what? If I'm honest, I haven't really. I found it really difficult. There's one book by a friend called "Winning the War Within,"
Mhm.
and he self-published that, and that's really brilliant. I've got another one in next door, which is coming out in October by someone in London, which I'm about to read, which is very exciting.
Mhm.
But yeah, like you said, I think it's also one of those things where I really struggled to get my independence back financially as well for quite a few years.
Yeah.
And even writing a book, it's like, again, it's nice, I guess, for young girls to see someone in the media who's got their life back and is working again and all of those things. Because knowing a lot of girls now in London who manage this, I think employment and finding a job which really suits the way we think and the way we work, even when we're stable, is quite
Mhm.
challenging. So it's nice to also encourage people to lean into those creative tendencies. And writing is such a great outlet for people like us
Yeah.
who have thoughts.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like we talk a lot just in our space and like on our social media and stuff about how creative people with bipolar typically are. There's a huge scientific link between like the creative mind and bipolar disorder for whatever reason. A lot of people who have it are very creatively inclined, and I think that's just like that's something we talk about yeah, a lot in our blogs and everything about how it is really such a good way to get those feelings out, and it's just a really good outlet. I think like writing is great, art is great, music, all of those things. If you can find some avenue where you feel comfortable to kind of express yourself, I think that's a really good thing to represent. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and also just to find things which define you, which aren't to do with your illness. I
Mhm.
think there's a lot of time around your diagnosis where it just becomes everything you think about absolutely every day, and it's the only thing you can talk about. And it's nice to build up your confidence and start to sort of meet new people through creative activities, or to just figure out what you're good at. And
Yeah.
it's just a nice way to sort of get our brains out of those sort of dips, which are so
Yeah.
negative.
Yeah, definitely. So you've been, let's see, you were diagnosed when you were 22, you're 29 now, so that's what, like 7 years of your life
Yeah.
now that you've kind of been comfortable with it and have had a journey. What would you say to that version of yourself? Like, what are some things that you wish that you knew back then, or things that you would have told, I guess, yeah, that version of yourself back then?
I think what I would have said is that you do get better at dealing with the lows, because I think when you've just had an episode, and then you're having lows, you actually don't know how to deal with it because you're worried that the whole thing might sort of spiral again and you're going to have a big another episode.
Yeah.
And actually, I think you just have to also expose yourself to the things which trigger you in order to get better at dealing with them. So, like for me, it was relationships. I couldn't see someone and then if it ended, not spiral and have to up my medication and be depressed for 2 months. And like it was just so bad every time. And then actually, what I realized is like, although it's so bad, sometimes the only way to actually be better at dealing with those triggers is to live through that. And
Yeah.
you don't even have to put the effort in. It's just that you get better expectation and you start going into things being like, well, this might not be the person I marry. So why don't I just enjoy it rather than going into it being like, I'm marrying this person, they're the love of my life. And then when that doesn't work out, you have a massive low. Whereas if you start approaching things slightly less grand, like in a grand headspace, then
Yeah.
when it works out, you're still not going to get as hurt if it doesn't work because you've sort of framed the whole thing in your mind as an experience rather than this epiphany.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, even socially, drinking, going out again, all of that. I was so scared to do that for so many years because I was so worried about the low after drinking. And I think I found joining in socially to be such a healing process. And even if I go and don't drink, but I'm around people, that affects my mood so much just to feel young and part of it again. When, recovery can be so isolating.
Mhm. Yeah, going off of, I guess, socially and making friends and stuff, do you feel like people have been validating towards you just in general in your journey, or do you feel like people didn't really take it seriously throughout, or have you kind of had experiences of both?
I think experiences are both. I think the difficult thing is that my temperament is up and like a lot of young people with bipolar, you're so used to masking, you're so
Yeah.
used to sort of using energy to come across like other people. And that's just always been such a massive part of my personality is that I don't like to burden, I don't like to bring the mood down. So I think a lot of my friends haven't been faced with how bad it feels.
Mhm.
Like it's such an invisible thing. But also when I have been more open and said, I'm actually really struggling today, the response has been so much better than I thought. And you really learn who your friends are in that process. And, if you do open up to someone and they still sort of want to pressure you to stay out and drink and they're not really understanding what you've said, then it's a way to sort of sieve out who you should really be friends with in the next part of your life because
Ah.
like we're so sensitive to energy with bipolar, honestly. Like hanging out with someone who makes you feel good can flip your mood completely in a
Yeah.
really positive way. And so gradually I've just had to come away from friendships and be like, how do I actually feel after seeing them? Do I really feel I can be myself? And the more I can be myself, the better I am at dealing with my bipolar. So yeah, it's been quite a learning curve.
Yeah. Do you feel like you've had to be a little bit more cautious with people that you let into your inner circle?
Yeah. Yeah. Just because I just don't like I just feel like I have to stretch to my edges to be
Yeah.
happy. And when I feel that I'm not being myself, it's just uncomfortable and I get really awkward and socially awkward and then I'm not sort of doing the things I want to do. So I would way rather have a close knit group of friends and see them multiple times a week. Don't think I'd ever go back to being someone who's sort of social butterfly, seeing loads of people every night who I'm not close to.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's changed my outlook a lot.
Yeah. Has your relationship with like you mentioned drinking and going out and being social in that way, has your relationship with that changed, or do you feel like that's something that is like a struggle for you? Because I know, or just being a young person, obviously, that's kind of a lot of times, I think, especially where you are in the UK, it's like a huge part of how
Yeah.
you socialize, and it is kind of just a normal thing that we do every single day, you know?
Yeah,
But do you feel like
English
that's
people
been
love to drink. They
yeah.
love to drink. I remember I was in LA once and I think it was someone's like 30th birthday and I brought a bottle of wine and everyone looked at me being like, "What, alcoholic?" And I was like, "What the hell?" And I remember someone being like, "Oh yeah, we're just having some kombucha." And I was like, "Okay,
Oh.
British people love drinking." And it's definitely made it harder because a lot of plans are based around pub culture.
Yeah.
Um, So yeah, it was really difficult for a few years, like not joining in with that, and I didn't even find my activity ideas very exciting. Like there's only so many runs and coffees you can suggest before people sort of like put you in that box and then stop inviting you to the
Yeah.
fun stuff.
Yeah.
But I think a really nice part about seeing improvement in your mental health is that you can withstand drinking again. It's just like ways to manage it. So my like golden rule, which is obviously not the same for everyone, is never 2 nights in a row.
Mm,
So because of microtyping, I think when I drink the next day, I'm like guaranteed to be low mood. So
yeah.
2 days in a row, that starts to slip into depression. Whereas if I constantly catch myself, I've managed to not be as, someone who has to get rid of drinking altogether.
Mm,
So I really enjoy going out again and all of those things, but it's felt like such a reward to find a way to do it. And
mhm.
I'm just so certain that I'll never be able to go back to someone who's just having a casual glass of wine every night. Like that can't happen. But my
Yeah.
appreciation for being able to go clubbing again and drinking and doing all of those things is so much better with the perspective that I couldn't do any of it for like 4 years.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It kind of goes along with what we were saying about medication, where it's just like it is so personal and you really have to pay attention to your body. I feel like that's just one of the biggest takeaways of this whole conversation is like you really do have to know yourself and take that time to like be self-aware and figure out like can I handle this? Am I just doing this because
Yeah.
I think I should? Or
It's such a funny, like, weird thing because our moods are so sensitive. You can also like get very specific market research on what affects your mood. So for me, it's like a margarita's good. I can't concentrate the next day, but I'm not down.
yeah.
Negroni is brilliant mood, but almost puts me high a bit because I won't sleep after one. So
Hmm.
that's like my favorite drink. But then wine is always depressed the next day. But if
Yeah.
I have natural wine, I sort of feel good about it. And then like 9 times out of 10, I have no alcohol at all, and then I slip right into enjoying all of these non-alcoholic spirits and stuff, which I guess I'm trying to see as something exciting, but every
Yeah.
single drink is a different mood, and you start getting these management ways, which other people just wouldn't think about. Um, so yeah, it's a long process.
It is.
You
Yeah, no,
can
you
try to
really
figure out what affects you.
it's just trial and error, honestly. It's like medication. Like once you've kind of figured that out, then you can see socially and like exercise and stuff and just all of it. Like it's such a process and it's something that you really do have to just like put your time and energy into. And it's hard, but I feel like I'm sure you can attest that it's worth it and it's made your life a lot better to kind of put that effort and put that work in, I'm assuming.
Yes, and I would also say with exercise, someone once said to me, "Have you ever regretted a run?"
Mm,
And there's not a single, even sometimes I'm so low that I'll only go out for 10 minutes,
yeah.
but I have never, ever, ever regretted one. Like it has always been the turning point. And I find running quite a nice one. A, because you can do it from anywhere.
Yeah.
B, because you don't have to wear like a skimpy running outfit. You can wear a hoodie and you can wear your pajama bottoms. Like
Yeah.
once you get rid of what you think exercise should be and realize that it's for your mind, running's
Mhm.
such a brilliant one because you can just, no one even has to know. You don't have to put it on Strava. You don't have to like record it. You don't have to be getting certain timings, but your
Yeah.
mood will lift. Like fitness is just the best drug. It's the
Mhm.
only thing which really helps on a low day, and it really gives me a sense of control.
Do you feel like your relationship with exercise and fitness changes depending on if you're more manic or depressive?
Yeah. Do you know what? It has a consistency because I love listening to music.
Mhm.
Um, so when I'm not feeling good, as soon as I've got music in loudly, I sort of forget that. Um,
Yeah.
I definitely I wouldn't say I enjoy it more when I'm high because I think my thoughts are going so rapidly and I'm actually sort of a bit like agitated, but it is
Yeah.
definitely helpful to calm me down. But when I'm high, exercising does help, but actually eating bigger meals is good because I don't
Mm.
know about like other people, but you lose your appetite a little bit when you're up and you feel like, you just want to dart around. And so
Mhm.
actually I try and exercise more when I'm down. Whereas when I'm up, I really try to like do yoga, slow things down,
Yeah,
eat
lower
bigger
impact.
hot
Mhm.
meals, like start to tell my body like no, rather
Right.
than get myself too excited. Running can sometimes get me, like, higher if I'm high.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. No, I think that's yeah, again, another thing that you've learned through experience and paying attention to your body, which is I feel people need to be doing. Cool. Well, I guess last question, and then we can open it up to comments for a couple minutes. How are you right now? I'm just curious, like, what is your kind of like, how would you explain your relationship with this diagnosis at this point in your life? Do you feel like you've kind of gotten it under control, or is it something that you just still feel like you're gonna be up and down for the rest of your life? Or like, what is your perspective on that at this point after all of this?
Um, I feel very excited for life. Like, I feel really excited because I think when the more you learn about your illness, the more empowered you can be. There's less element of surprise. And so I'm not worried about things like even if I were to get pregnant, I would get support. I would put support in place before I need it. I feel like I'm adulting about my bipolar and I'm taking it really seriously, which makes me feel quite good that someone else isn't having to do that for me anymore.
Yeah.
So I feel really excited, and I'm on a low amount of medication, so I do have the ups and the downs. But I would say when you have that shift in perspective that you're not also aiming to be happy, which the first few years can be, you're constantly like, how am I going to be happy? How am I going to be happy? And when you're
Yeah.
managing it up and down, and it's quite like mild both on both ends, you then sort of it's the acceptance is the real happiness of being like, okay, this is life now. It is these two extremes. I don't believe I can get better than this because they're manageable highs and lows. They're not then I don't feel like it's a threat to get in the way of my life again. And
Hmm.
I think that's all you sort of ever wish for with bipolar is just a sense of calm. It's just
Yeah,
a
of
sense
course.
of like this is it now. I have highs and I have lows.
Hmm.
I'm not trying to change meds again. I'm not trying to get better. There's nothing which I don't feel is out of my reach now. So yeah,
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
good place with it.
Good, good. You feel like it's kind of just it's become a part of your life, not necessarily something that like dictates it. And
100%. There's
mhm.
never a social plan now, which I don't feel I could go to. Maybe that's also just because the people who I choose to hang out with are also always a safe space now. But
Mhm.
also with work, it's just been really nice to build my confidence and get better with your limits and what you can take on. And
Yeah.
so I'm not worried that this is going to take over my life again. And outside of social media, it's not who Rosie is. On Instagram, it is because I just really want to use my platform to talk about it. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's a nice feeling. That's a really nice feeling.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's just such a good thing too. I would honestly recommend if there are younger girls watching this to follow Rosie on her Instagram because I feel like you really do post a lot of just good content. I know you do a lot of stuff like this and you're very active in the community. So I would highly recommend
Oh.
that as a younger girl for sure. All right. Well, we can open it up to questions. I think there's already one. You can let me know if you cannot see them. If you go down to Q&A at the bottom, you should be able to see them, but if not, I can absolutely read them. And then yeah, anyone watching, if you guys have any questions for Rosie, we can do a little Q&A before we end for the day.
Do you want me to just go ahead and answer that question?
Yeah, go ahead.
So it says, I want to know how much therapy is important with medication. And this is a really interesting one for me because I have got to know some Bipolar UK ambassadors who are much older than me
Mhm.
and they're really thriving. And a lot of people swear by therapy being the thing which actually helped them accept bipolar and thrive. And I think that's the key importance is it doesn't really matter what gets you there, but accepting your diagnosis rather than wishing you had someone else's life is the biggest shift.
Mhm.
Um, and I think therapy for most people is the way to do that. I personally had quite a difficult time with my therapist. So around my diagnosis, I was on so much medication and I slipped into having binge eating, which I'm sure loads of people also have. I've read that a lot of our community really struggle with this. And my therapist at the time dismissed this and said, look, if you want to talk about an eating disorder, this isn't where you speak about it. And that sort of ingrained in me that, bipolar is separate to everything else and more serious, but all the other symptoms which other girls my age have, it was like the therapy for bipolar should only be to talk about highs and lows. And
Right.
actually, it's so comorbid with other mental illness, whether that's anxiety, whether that's an eating disorder. And so from that moment, I shut away from therapy and I just thought, I can't do this,
Mhm.
which is why I turned to writing a lot down. Having said that, I have just started therapy. um, yeah, I know, better late than never.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
at the right age of 29, I thought, okay,
Never too much.
when you speak publicly about your story, you become so detached from it. And that's a whole
Mhm.
nother sort of thing, in that you're talking about this person who's been through hell, but I can't feel sorry for myself. And I can be quite mean to myself and sort of say like, oh, it wasn't that bad, even though it was so bad. But you're so detached from it. It's like talking about something which you didn't go through. It's just like you just get, it becomes a script. And so I'm doing a lot of therapy now to sort of actually accept that when I have these big triggers and I go into these lows, whether it's like, abandonment, or if it's a high because someone in my family is becoming unwell, it's
Mhm.
reconnecting with my bipolar and saying, this is still something you manage. That girl is still you, which is a really brilliant thing to be doing. I'm really enjoying it so far.
Mhm. Yeah, I do feel like it's kind of like the medication thing where you really just have to try so many different ones, and I think so many people have experiences like that where it's just like you don't feel validated and you feel kind of thrown off by things that they say, and it's a human being at the other end of it, whatever, if you're doing Zoom or in person, anything, like you just kind of have to like trial and error therapists just like you trial and error medications, and again, such a process, but I think it is really just can be so helpful for so many people. I feel like especially paired with medication, if that works for you, is yeah, just like life changing for so many people. So
Oh, I agree. um,
all
we've
right.
had there's one lovely comment saying, "Love your book, one of the best books on
Yeah.
bipolar I've read." Another, I will try. I'm already scheming. So
Sure.
thank you. And then we've got a anonymous question, which is, when you had your first normal time, do you remember what combination of things were doing that at the time? I take salmon, omega fish oil, doing meditation, magnesium for sleep, psychotherapy, maintaining regular sleep cycle. What about you? So I do remember stability. I think for me, the first thing which happened was that I had put a plan in place for that September. So I was sort of open-endedly trying to get better. And I didn't feel like I had a timeline. I couldn't really cope with not having a plan and not knowing when I might start feeling better. And I was really at rock bottom. So I signed up to a course to be a nurse, which didn't happen, but it was a massive turning point for me, because suddenly having a plan in September meant that summer I gave myself the grace to have a summer holiday and to accept that I wasn't working, and that was fine. And in that time, I started quetiapine, and quetiapine was a bit of a breakthrough for me. And it didn't cure the depression, but it was noticing that the voice in my mind was being quieter. And
Mhm.
so then running wasn't so hard again. So at the time where I reached stability, it was running again. I wasn't doing huge distances because I hadn't exercised for a year. I was really struggling with weight gain on all my medications as well. So it was only sort of 10, 20 minutes. But it was a lot of walks with my mum, like a lot of being out in nature, and it was eating really healthily and very high protein. I know that a lot of people in America are hacking into this sort of keto thing for bipolar, which is incredibly good for me. Like, the
Yeah.
more I lean into that, the better I feel. So I would really, really recommend a high protein diet,
Mhm.
especially because of the weight gain and feeling sluggish and having no energy and lethargic. I've just noticed my energy levels are so much better if I don't have loads of processed stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so it was all of those lifestyle changes combined, but that was a massive one for me, diet, and something which over here on the NHS you're not really told about.
Mhm.
But I mean, I'm here 7 years later, and I still really live by it because it makes such a difference. No sugar crashes.
Yeah, that's true. It does kind of stabilize your mood a little bit when you're eating clean because you don't get those highs and lows. Like I feel like food can almost be a trigger for that in a way.
100%. And especially when you're so hungry, as long as you're
Mhm.
eating the right stuff, it doesn't really matter. Like you're not hard on yourself. Whereas if you're really hungry and then I was just reaching for Oreos. And I think when that happens, you have the sugar low. So I was waking up at 2 p.m. the next day from so much sugar. And then also it's the self-hatred that you can't control. Whereas when you're eating savory, you just get fuller and there's a limit to how much you can have. Like it's not as appealing. You don't want 2 punnets of grapes, do you? Like it's not very fun. So yeah, you just
Yeah.
stop. So yeah,
Yeah,
putting the right stuff in the fridge is great.
definitely. All right. I think we have just a couple more. Let's see. During your low phases, what all do you do to manage it and come out faster and better?
That's a really good question. I've spoken a lot about running, but
Hmm.
when I'm low, I do a lot of yoga. Um, so I think it's mainly because I also book into a class quite early in the morning. So I'll book into something at 7, and it's horrible when your alarm goes off. But the sense of achievement going and like knowing that you lose money if you don't go, like I have to have something to keep me accountable. Whereas
Hmm.
when I'm low, if I go on a run, I just won't do it. So I get into yoga, and also I think it's just nice as soon as you get out the house and to be around other people's energy in a low is really important.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, that's my way to get out of it, and then also reducing time on a screen if possible.
Yeah.
So deleting social media basically.
I know that's, yeah, I think a newer thing that our generation is really having to navigate with mental health. It's a huge, huge detriment. It can be, or it can also be really great with obviously people like you. You can connect and share, but yeah, you got to be careful for sure.
Mute everyone who doesn't make you feel good.
Hmm.
If you think, oh, they're having a better life than mine, then just you realize you don't actually have to see their life. Their life doesn't exist if you click mute. So yeah, just do little calls. It really helps.
Let's see. Kim said, "Oh, just want to say thank you for sharing your experience. Have a beautiful life." That's very
Oh,
nice.
that's so nice.
Very sweet. And then I guess this is a
Venus
good one to end on. Just do you think it's possible to have a stable life?
I do. I actually really do. And that's someone who's had type 1 with psychosis, believing I was religious, like very extreme, and then suicidal ideation. And I've really had such an extreme version with bipolar, and looking at my childhood, like it's always been rife. And I'm still someone who has highs and lows, but I genuinely feel like this is a stability I'm happy with. And I
Hmm.
feel like there's so many positives to having bipolar in the way that you understand empathy of people going through a difficult time. Like it builds your character so much, and that gives you a sense of confidence other people don't have because
Yeah.
you're so smart emotionally. And I do feel like it's possible to have a stable life. I think you just have to accept that you take your health more seriously than other people and turn that into a positive, whether it's getting into cooking and so food becomes something which is an exciting thing. It's just, you know, seeing friends, making sure it's the right friends so that you want to get out the house, social interaction, getting yourself nice gym gear so you want to exercise. It's like you sort of have to find ways to make these ways of staying stable really appealing to yourself, and figuring out how best to do that.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. I think that's just a really good sentiment to leave it on, kind of the general theme of everything we've talked about today. I feel like it's just like you gotta keep pushing it and keep trying things to see where you can really get to a point where I feel like you have gotten to, it seems like, where you're comfortable with it and you've kind of accepted it and have learned that it's a part of you and it's not going away, but you've learned how to, yeah, just have a really happy, stable life, which I think is a really good thing to share with people. Very inspiring.
Yeah. Oh, well, so lovely to speak to you. And
Yeah, me
yeah,
too.
I'm very open about these things. And
Mhm.
we say all of this, but it's still there's parts of it where that extreme confidence and the ways you act in those states, like the next day, I still feel embarrassed by it. I still, on a low, think, can I do this? And text my mom, age 29. It's like fine to know that you never have to have it all figured out, but it does get so much easier the kinder to yourself you are about it. And just
Absolutely.
knowing that like the clouds pass each time.
Yeah.
Um, the good thing about bipolar is that we can come out of it. We can
Always
come
like
out of low. We can flip
that.
up. I mean, the high after a low is better than is like more of a
Better than the
thing.
opposite.
Desperate for it.
Oh, that's so true.
Sensitive people.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us. Do you want to shout out anything before we go?
Just if anyone wants to read my book, I would be so happy. I think, yeah, it's available
Absolutely.
on Amazon in the US. It's probably the best place to get it, but
Mhm.
I really hope you like it. And I read all of my messages on Instagram. So if you have any thoughts, please let me know.
Yeah. What is your Instagram handle?
Rosie Viva, Viva. So
Okay.
Rosieieva.
And
Yeah.
I think we should have a link to, it might just be the UK link. I'll make sure that we have the Amazon link as well. On our website, we'll make sure that this is uploaded for anybody who wants to watch it and share it. But I think that's it. Thank you so much for talking to us. Thanks,
Have
everybody.
a lovely weekend.
Yeah, you too. Take care. Have a good evening. I
Thank
guess it's
you. Thank
nighttime for you.
you. Yeah. Bye.
Bye.